411 Live.
Where you can learn about issues that affect us every day. State of world, 411 Live.
Real people, real talk.
Made to help people in our community in every way. For your girl, 411 Live.
A few years ago, a friend of mine was looking for a home to buy. Her real estate agent told her about this house she thought she'd really like. The agent contacted the seller. The seller asked that agent, "Is your client black?" And the agent said, "I can't tell you that." And the seller took that as a yes and told her, "I do not want to sell my house to a black person." Then the seller hired an agent, and both of them signed an amendment to the listing agreement that excluded my friend's agent from showing that property to anyone. My friend and her agent filed discrimination complaints, and under the Fair Housing Act, this resulted in a federal lawsuit. My friend was awarded $30,000. Her agent was awarded $5,000. I tell you this story because we're going to be talking about these things. Hello, everybody. I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. Real people, real talk. We are going to be talking about housing issues, lending, redlining, efforts being done to improve the system. And the person that we picked on the 411 Live to talk about this is Bethany Sanchez. Bethany is Senior Administrator of the Fair Lending Program at the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. And she's also on the board of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. That's a lot, but you do a lot. So welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here. Important issues.
It really is. Really, really is. And I was talking about that story of what happened to my friend, but someone who is in a similar situation, they have a place to go. They can go to the Fair Lending Pro or the Fair Housing Council, to you, right?
Right. Right. So the Fair Housing Council is the Fair Housing Council is a private nonprofit organization. We're not a government entity. We're a nonprofit organization that works to increase opportunities for people in the housing market and to ensure rights and ensure that people aren't discriminating against people in protected classes, and to encourage integration in the housing market. The Fair Housing Council helps people with fair housing questions and fair housing complaints related to rental properties, home sale process, so that's realtors, the sellers, and others. Anything in the home loan process, so banks, mortgage companies, credit unions, title companies, homeowners insurance, renters insurance, and mortgage rescue scams. All of those are covered by the fair housing laws at the federal level and also at the state level.
So if somebody were to come to you with, this complaint, I think I've been discriminated against, what is the cost to the service? Is there a cost for the service?
Oh, nothing. We don't charge. No, there is no cost for the service. We don't charge anything for probably 99% of the things that we do. From time to time, we'll enter into an agreement with some kind of a housing provider company, like a realtor, a realty company or some other company and it'll be a fee for service kind of thing to train their employees or to do monitoring, to do fair housing monitoring of their operations, and so that their lead folks can be confident that their employees aren't going rogue and doing illegal activities behind their backs.
Right.
But for the most part, for the vast majority of what we do, our services are completely free.
That's phenomenal. So let's go back to somebody who is suspecting discrimination, that kind of thing. You guys do what? I think it's called the match pair testing.
Yeah. So the first step is to call and make talk to the intake analyst, and they will determine whether. So the question that will come up and that will need to be determined first is the situation something that is where someone's being treated differently because of their race or their ethnicity or gender or religion or disability or family status or any one of a number of other what they call protected classes. So if they're being treated differently because of one of those things in any aspect of the housing market, then that's when we can help them. So if it sounds like they're being treated differently or they're alleging that they're being treated differently, that's when the match paired testing comes into place. And I can't really get into the specifics of how that works, but it's sort of like people compare it to a secret shopper, and we can go out and prove that housing provider, whether it's a banker or a landlord or a seller or a realtor, whomever, that they're treating whites differently than blacks,
Right.
men differently than women. People with disabilities differently than people without disabilities.
Bethany, there was something that you wrote that I found interesting. You wrote, owning a home offers stability and sustainability. Explain that.
Well, when you own a home, you know that your rent's not going to go up. I mean, your taxes might go up and often do, but you know that your rent's not going to go up. You know that you're not going to be arbitrarily kicked out of your home. You know that you have the ability to put down roots and raise your family in the neighborhood that you choose to invest in. You know that if you want to be close to where your church is or where your job is or where there's parks or good schools, that you can make those choices. And one of the things that I think we're going to be talking about today is redlining. And when redlining sort of redlining has narrowed down where those choices are for a big chunk of our population, and it's illegal.
Right.
And it's something that we're working against.
And then home ownership, that gives you, increases your net worth. You have equity in a home, and that puts you far above somebody who may be renting, right?
Absolutely. When you're renting, that money's just going to your landlord every month, and it puts a roof over your head. Sometimes it's questionable, how good of a roof you've got,
Mm-hmm.
If it's leaking or if the, heat's not good or there's, holes in the wall, whatever. But where was I going with that? Building wealth. So with your home, every month that you pay on your mortgage, assuming you have a mortgage, most of us need to have a mortgage in order to purchase a house and need to have that loan in order to purchase the house. But every month that you pay on that principal balance on your mortgage, that gives you more equity and more wealth. And for the vast majority of people in this country, black, white, brown, whatever, your home is your major source of your wealth. I know for sure it is for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Any net wealth if it weren't for that.
Yeah. I when we were talking earlier, I was talking to you about reading this book, The Warmth of Other Suns, The Epic Story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. And your response was, that's a good one, but you should also read The Color of Law. And I will do that. But these books kind of look at the history of how things were done and the obstacles that were put into place for, the protected groups that you were talking about. Can we talk about some of those obstacles from, back then and maybe that we're still seeing now? You mentioned redlining, and that's a big one. People hear that word a lot. I don't know that everybody understands it.
Sure. So going back before redlining even took place back in the, well, yeah, I think it's the 30s. I had it written down here somewhere. The, the government started building public housing, but public housing was for white people that couldn't find affordable units anywhere, and people of color were actually, had a barrier and weren't able to even move into that housing. The redlining started officially. It probably happened more unofficially in the prior to this, but in the early 30s, the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration, actually instituted policies, and they mapped the biggest cities in the country and coded those cities, neighborhoods in terms of whether it was prudent for banks and other lenders to lend either for mortgages or even for small business loans. But FHA was about home ownership. So it was basically they were saying, you, Mr. Banker, because at that point it was pretty much just men, you, Mr. Banker, if you choose to make a loan in this neighborhood, the federal government is not going to back that loan. We're not going to help you out and make the conditions better for you. If you go over here in this blue neighborhood, like the east side of Milwaukee, yeah, sure, we're all about that because there's no people of color living there. But these red line neighborhoods, or in this case, it was not just red line, but it was red blocks of neighborhoods that where they said no, that this just isn't acceptable. When you look at Milwaukee's map, it's not too much different from the way, the demographics of how our neighborhoods show up now. I live in a neighborhood, for example, where in the section called neighborhood composition. So these maps also had little descriptions for each of the little neighborhoods. So for my neighborhood, in the neighborhood composition, it said laborers and ne'er-do-wells. That was the composition listed for my neighborhood. That's who lived there. Only neighborhoods and people who were ne'er-do-wells.
Oh, wow.
And in the availability of mortgage funds, in the areas that are redlined, it says none. Also, at the bottom of the page describing each neighborhood, there's some clarifying remarks. In mine, it said, this is the Negro and slum area of Milwaukee. It is old and very ragged. Besides the colored people, a large number of lower type Jews are moving into this section.
Oh, wow.
That's for our federal government. That's the kind of comments that they were just making at will, and it didn't seem problematic to those people, I guess.
Right. So Black people are clustered in these red boxes, and I guess people are trying to keep them in that space and not move out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So you've got the red line neighborhoods, redlined by the FHA and by banks and also insurance companies up until really the 70s, I think pretty willy-nilly, and maybe even in some cases still now, and we still monitor that. Red line, restrictive covenants. Restrictive covenants are illegal and unenforceable, but there are still some on the records in some people's houses that say you may not sell your house to, I don't remember, Negroes, or I forget what the wording that's used in some of the more, some of the ones from Milwaukee that still are actually on the books. But again, they're unenforceable, but back then they were enforced. Appraisals, that's another big one. If you, going back to the issue of building wealth, you're in your home in a red line neighborhood, and I guess the good news on the front end is that the it might not cost you as much to purchase that property, but you're not going to be able to build as much wealth as somebody in a neighborhood in another part of town, in one of the blue neighborhoods or even the yellow neighborhoods, where their property, they might have bought in at, say, $100,000, and now with, over 20, 30 more years, it might be worth $400,000. Well, whereas somebody bought in to a redline neighborhood, it generally stays pretty flat or just appreciates a little bit, and you can't sell it and pull some equity out to fund your retirement or to move into a nursing home, or whatever it is to help your kids through college. All those opportunities are lost when your home doesn't appreciate, or when you've been renting all your life.
Man, that's tough. That is so wrong, because you can have a similar house. I'm just thinking a similar house on the east side, a similar house, in this redlined box. They look alike. They have all the, 2 bathrooms, 2.5 baths, whatever. But this house over here that's in the blue box is so much higher. And then this one in the red line area is so low. And so that net wealth it's just so unfair.
Yeah, it is. And actually, there's a group, well, we're looking at a lot of different things, but there's a renewed emphasis on that appraisal issue. Just a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Drake from the Journal Sentinel wrote an article that appeared in the Sunday paper in the business section about appraisals, and he described how I had told him about appraisals in the Johnson Josie Heights neighborhood. They were trying to build, there was vacant land there, and people wanted to build a home there, but they couldn't get an appraisal for a finished property that would support a loan to build there, because the loan, the cost of building was higher than the appraised property in the surrounding area, even though this was going to be a brand new house. On the other side, there was a new house in Brewers Hill that was built on property a couple of years ago, a vacant property. And their lender, and that was with white people, and their lender and appraiser went all the way over to the east side to get comparables, and they were able to justify that, that value. And it's just not fair.
No, it's not. You know what? We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the housing dilemma that we're in. And stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to the 411 Live.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping. Maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Emotes say a lot, but they can't say it all. Think your guildmate is struggling? Try these dialogue options. Go beyond emotes. Check in with your guildmates at seizetheawkward.org.
Welcome back to the 411 Live. I am with Bethany Sanchez with the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. We're talking about lending, housing, discriminatory practices, you name it. Bethany, I want to go back to some of the things that we were mentioning earlier. I'm just kind of looking at my notes. I know that you're on the board of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. And I went to that website, and saw some really, really good articles. But one thing that stood out to me was this mystery shopper test that was done recently, and it looked at those PPP loans, those Paycheck Protection Program loans, and looking at how they were being distributed based on race, and during this COVID period that we're in, and they found some interesting things. I mean, even in that, we see discrimination in, what they would tell people about it, the information that they would give, that kind of thing. Are you surprised by that?
No, unfortunately. I mean, I'm disgusted by it, but I'm not surprised. NCRC was actually doing mystery shopper testing or match paired testing for small businesses even prior to the pandemic and prior to the PPP program. But we have doubled down and testing around the country in several different markets. And really, tens of thousands of minority-owned small businesses across the country were among the last to receive those PPP loans. Now, I will say that the government now, in their current round, instead of asking like way at the bottom of the application for the race or other demographics of the owner, now it's up at the top. And there's some kind of a systematic way for that to collect that information so that regulators can look at those disparities more easily and hopefully prevent them. But NCRC's mystery shopping study between April and late May, so it was a relatively small part, but it was backed up by others who were doing similar things. NCRC found that white borrowers were given far better treatment and leniency at 13 out of the 17 banks that they tested.
That's oh wow. That's unbelievable. I guess I shouldn't say it's unbelievable, but it's just not fair. It's just not fair.
No, it's not.
A landlord was quoted as saying he was attracted to Milwaukee because he saw a market where rent was high compared to low property costs. So we have really high rent and a lot of low-income people having to rent, paying exorbitant amounts, taking up a great percentage of their paycheck. And what's being done about that? We don't have a cap.
No, there's no cap for rents in Wisconsin. There's or anywhere that I'm aware of, but there's also in Wisconsin, as opposed to some other states, there's no cap on how much a landlord can increase your rent at any given point. So it's it's slanted towards the landlords for sure. There's a recent study out of an organization from Detroit that really showed that discrepancy between the price that the value of houses in neighborhoods of color versus the amount of rent that's being charged and extracted from those neighborhoods. And again, it's not fair.
Yeah.
And really, for a solution, we need programs like this and 100 more programs like this to really lift up these issues and help people understand what's going on in our neighborhoods and take back the neighborhoods and help people to figure out that if you're paying $1,200 a month for rent or more in a lot of cases, if you've got a decent credit record, you can probably get some down payment assistance, and you can probably buy a house and save a fair amount of money every month and be building wealth for yourself and for your family. And so we need to help people to do that. We need more credit counseling agencies to help people understand how to clean up their credit if it is impaired and has some dings on it. It is possible to do that. And I would recommend any of your listeners to check with Riverworks Development. They have one that's where I make my referrals in terms of that kind of work. We also need more support for our housing counseling agencies.
Yes.
In Milwaukee, Housing Resources Incorporated is the biggest full service housing counseling agency. So they help people to clean up their credit also, although that's not their major focus, but if that's what the borrower or potential borrower needs, they'll help with that. And then they'll help them to understand the process of home buying and help them understand what's legal, what's not, what their options are, and hold their hand through the process. They also help people who are already homeowners with things like their tool loan center, or help them to access a home improvement loan. And for people who are in default or concerned about going into default or foreclosure, they also have programs and staff on call waiting to help you out. And I will say it's important to note on that foreclosure part, they recently received a contract with with Milwaukee County to provide grants to homeowners whose loans were in default because of low income homeowners whose loans are in default because of COVID. And it's not even a loan, it's a grant. They would bring you back up to current rate. Now you can only get one of these. So if your loan is permanent, if your income is permanently reduced and you're not going to be able to make those payments in the future, well, it'll buy you some time, but you need to be able to, going forward, pay that loan.
Right.
But anyway, I just wanted to be sure and get that in.
I'm glad you did. And one of the big things too, I think, is just letting people know that home ownership is possible. Because there are some people who think, well, it's not for me, I can't get it. But it's possible.
Right.
Yeah. Tell me about Opportunity MKE.
Opportunity MKE is the Fair Housing Council's newest program, and it's a program that works to help, as you were just saying, help people understand what's possible in terms of where you live. And it's directed towards people with Section 8 housing vouchers, and folks who are eligible are, they have at least one child, and they have a voucher from either the Housing Authority of the City of Milwaukee, the Housing Authority for Milwaukee County, or the Housing Authority for Waukesha County. And if you live in either Milwaukee County or Waukesha County and have a housing voucher, and you're interested in finding out about neighborhoods where there's more opportunities for you to work, let's say, and be closer to your work, or for your children to have good schools or parks, or any number of opportunities, but it helps folks to understand different neighborhoods than they might be familiar with, and helps them to explore it. And in many cases might help with an actual security deposit to land one of the units in one of those neighborhoods, in an opportunity neighborhood. And again, no charge for our services.
Very good. Bethany, as we've been talking, your organization covers so much, and we've just kind of scratched the surface a little bit on it. A lot of people can really, really benefit from the things that you guys do. Do you feel like a lot of people don't know about your services?
I do. And that's why we need, 100 more of the 411s. We need help, because we're a small organization. We used to have someone whose job it was that was dedicated to doing outreach and education. She was the outreach, in this case, it was always since I've been there, it's she has been the outreach and education person. But about a year ago, she left to take another job. And actually, as it worked out, funding cuts made it so it was hard for us to put replacement. So the rest of us are trying to fill in and do that job. But it's a big job, and we reach out to whoever is interested in hearing, about how we can help, how they can get engaged and help themselves. Whether it's your block club or your church or your sorority or your professional organization. What else? Who else do we? Basically, anybody that reaches out and is interested in hearing, what's available, we all want to figure out a way to connect and make that presentation. Right now, it'd be virtually, but hopefully within the next year, we'll be able to start doing in-person presentations again.
Okay, and let's put out again how they would reach you. The Fair Housing Council's phone number is 414-278-1240, 278-1240. Right now, we're all virtual still, but that line is being monitored and messages are being retrieved from 3 or 4 times a day, and so people will get back to you ASAP. If you want to talk to me directly, I can give you my email address. I'll just put it out there. I invite emails and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It's B for Bethany, and then my last name, Sanchez, Sanchez. So B Sanchez at fairhousingwisconsin.com. And Fair Housing and all of Wisconsin it's all spelled out .com. Very good.
And I'm the Fair Lending Director. So if you have a complaint about rental properties, or really if you have a fair housing complaint, it's best to start with the phone number, and the intake analyst will call you back and have a conversation and then go from there. But if you want to talk about issues in the home lending market, feel free to, that would probably be best to start with me, or you could call and leave a message for me and I'll get back to you by phone.
All right. Bethany Sanchez, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little education about what you do and what's out there for us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate being asked to be here. Sure. And, I'd love to follow up with a part 2. We didn't even talk about CRA or what individuals can do. And, I'd love to have that conversation.
Sounds good. We'll have to do that. Thank you again. Bethany Sanchez, Senior Administrator of the Fair Lending Program of the Metropolitan Milwaukee Fair Housing Council. And I should mention again that she's on the board of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. Thank you again for joining us. And thank you for joining us for another edition of the 411 Live. Another reminder, we are a nonprofit organization, so if you're so inclined to donate, sponsor, go to our website, the411live.org. Until next time, I'm Beverly Taylor, and this is the 411 Live. If you would like to check out past episodes, there are many ways. Go to your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Like and watch us on Facebook. Watch and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, go to our website, the411live.org.